The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello there, and thank you so much for joining the conversation on Ready, Set, Respond. I am your host, Carla Alicea, Director of Client Performance for Apartment Ratings and Satisfax, and I'm so grateful to be here with you today and every month as we discuss topics that impact your community. As you guys know, these conversations are designed to have a little something for everyone, so I hope you and your colleagues will join in, participate in our audience polls, and take away insights to improve your operations. At the end of this program, don't forget to head over to the Satisfax page on either Facebook or Instagram, where you can add a comment and share your biggest takeaway from today's conversation for a chance to win a $50 gift card. As we wind down the busy leasing season and student churn and begin the hard work budget season, I thought we'd talk all about maximizing our residents' engagement after the move-in. We just had that busy move-in season, all these new residents, and now we want to make sure that we maximize that engagement and prepare for renewal season. And joining us for that conversation, we have That's My Job guests, Maria Pietroforte. I'm so excited to introduce you guys to Maria. I actually met Maria in 2006 at move.com, where she was the president of the rental divisions and I was on the sales team. She always stood out to me as a leader, as a motivator. She has one of the biggest smiles, great ideas. She's just a wealth of knowledge. So it's no surprise to me that she has become one of multifamily's top sought after consultants and speakers and trainers in the industry. So I'm excited to have her on our program today and to introduce you all to Maria. But before I do, you guys know the drill. It's time for our Ready, Set, Respond polls. We want to hear from you first. So to participate, pull out your phones and scan that QR code on your screen or head over to slido.com and enter that code you see on your screen, 1723309. So now keep in mind, when we do these polls, there are no right or wrong answers. They're just honest ones. So when you see the poll on your screen, on your phone, be ready to respond with your feedback. All right, you guys ready to get started? Let's start off with our first poll. Is resident retention, increased renewal rates, a priority for your community? That's what I want to know. Are you guys focused on maximizing renewals? That's not always the case, right? Some communities are going through repositioning, right? We're renovating. We're actually, doing a lot of turnover. But a lot of us, we want to maintain those residents. And it looks like 100% of you value your residents. You want to retain them. That is wonderful. We've got 19 people so far already responding, 100% saying yes, we want to retain our residents. It's great. That's what we're here to talk about today. How can we do that? What do we need to know? All right, our next poll, what would you consider the most valuable resource for enhancing resident retention at your community? So the options are feedback surveys, frequent and friendly communication, resident events, staff training, or technological tools. What's the most important tool for you? We've got 6 people in. I'll give everyone time to get logged into Slido so you can respond. I really want to know, what tools do you guys find valuable? All right, 79% frequent friendly communication. Okay, a couple people saying feedback surveys, some saying staff training. No one's saying resident events. Very interesting, kind of good to know. I really love the answer though. Right now we're at 18 respondents, 83% frequent and friendly communication. I think you guys know a little something here. All right, our next poll question, what channels do you consistently use to communicate with your residents? And I want you to select all that apply. What do you consistently use to communicate with your residents? All right, we've got 1 respondent, 2 respondents. Yep, we're using all the channels, it looks like. All the channels. 100% for email, so everyone's using email. We've got 63 using a resident portal or an app, 63% saying text message, 55% using social media, 35% doing door hangers still. Not bad, not bad at all, and 30% showing in-person meetings. Very interesting, 20 respondents, good information. Our last poll question, how often do resident referrals contribute to new leases at your community? Rarely or never result in new leases? Occasionally result in new leases? Frequently result in new leases? Or always result in new leases? All right, 10 respondents. Let's see if we can get a few more of you piping in with how things are going for your resident referrals. All right, we're looking like occasionally result in new leases. All right, well, I'm going to share some information with you guys that we have here at Satisfax all about this topic of resident retention. So the first thing, if you're a client of ours, you've probably seen this before. This is our renewal driver tracker. What we do is we take all of the survey data from all of our customers across the country, and we have thousands of communities in these programs that we're crunching data on every year, going as far back as 2013. What we do, the technical term for it is a correlation analysis. So we look at our data and we say what questions on the survey correlate with the highly likelihood of renewing the lease. And here's what we see. Perception of value for 2023 at the top and has been at the top. And that perception of value, we define that for, are we getting what we paid for, right? It's that, what did we expect when we bought something or when we rented? And are we getting that? Is that perception of value? Our sense of community, back to that poll question about frequent and friendly communication. That is the #1 contributor to sense of community. And then would recommend, #3 for 2023. We find that residents that are likely to recommend their apartment community to a friend or family member have a very high likelihood of also renewing. Of course, that apartment appearance, and we're seeing social media coming into play starting in 2018. So these drivers are definitely what we want to focus on when we're thinking about maximizing our resident retention and increasing our likelihood for renewals. So here's some more numbers for you guys. So let's do the numbers around this. Let's just look at the top 3 drivers as of 2023, as of this year. So perception of value, we have the descriptive statistics, which is that question index. That's that average, right? What is the average so far in the industry, right? And this is out of a 1 through 5 rating scale, right? So we're asking, how do you perceive your perception of value? We ask all of our respondents on our resident surveys to rate, and the average rating for perception of value is 3.39. But the target score, guys, the target score to maximize our renewals is a 3.75. How do we get that target score? It's a little thing called a regression analysis. It gives us that maximum score that we need to maintain as many residents as possible. So we like to call that the goal score, the target score. Sense of community, seeing the same thing, a 3.59 on average with the goal score of 4.05. Now, would recommend, it's not a rating scale question, it's a percentage. The average resident is 75% likely to recommend their community, but we want to get to an 85. If we're going to maximize our retention, that's what we're looking for. So I think right now it's a really good time to bring out our guest, Maria. Maria, are you there?
I am here.
Hi, welcome to Ready, Set, Respond. So what do you think about these numbers?
Well, you should see, I have a whole page that I've been taking notes with because I've been listening to every word you've said. And, being a former leader of teams, index versus target scores are really important to me. And I think you've summed it up, to the primary areas that the residents are looking for that can help us then determine what our roadmap is so that we can improve our scores.
Absolutely. Well, I heard, and I know from having followed you and been trained by you, that you have a lot of good and valuable information to share with our audience. So I think what I'd like to do is start out with some of your ideas for perception of value. What are some things that our site team should be focused on when it comes to enhancing the value that they're providing to their residents?
Well, one of the top of mind things for me is that in our world today, everybody is looking for instant gratification. And how you can translate that into resident retention is a couple different things. First of all, is that if a resident contacts us, whether it's about their lease, about something in their apartment, a work order, they expect us to respond to them immediately. So we have to prioritize our communication, our response time with our residents. And I'm going to take it a step further. We're going to go down the maintenance hole. If you have a resident that has a work order, and y'all know that in the summertime, we just love our air conditioners, don't we?
Absolutely.
It never fails, though, that it's difficult for a property to keep enough parts or replacement air conditioners in your maintenance shop, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we have to order these things, and where we tend to fail, and I believe our perception of value decreases, is when we're not keeping your resident apprised of what's going on. We had to order this part, it's going to take 2 weeks. And I always say, never over promise, always under promise so you can over deliver. So that's just one example. The thing about value is your residents expect your community, your curb appeal, your amenities. They want everything to be the way they saw it when they got there. They want it to be pristine. They're living an experience. And everything that you do, the condition of your asset, and how you respond to them, it matters. And to me, it seems simple, but it's not, because we're busy at the properties. But we've got to remember that the way we handle our residents, it affects how they value your community and what they think of you.
Absolutely. And we see that a lot in our data, right? When we're consulting with our clients on the perception of value. And we see if there's a score that decreased, we can ask questions. Well, are there any amenities that have been taken offline? How quickly are the work orders being completed? You know, if a resident sitting there washing their dishes by hand because they have a dishwasher right next to them that's been out of order for 2 weeks, that perception of value is going to suffer, right? Because they're paying for the dishwasher, but yet they're having to wash their dishes by hand.
Absolutely. And they're going to take to social media and tell everybody how disappointed they are in you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we're thinking about strategies for enhancing perception of value, I think what, Maria is getting to is that we want to use our communication tools, that email, that SMS, those portal notifications. We want to keep our residents informed at every stage of the process, so that they understand that, the service we provide is also part of that value. Are we providing that service? And even if we are providing that service, are we sure that the residents are aware of it? You guys do so much work on the back end, right? Do the residents know all of the work that you're doing?
And to touch on that, I think it's really important not only that you're communicating, but how you're communicating. And what I mean by that is the words that you're using and your delivery methods. For instance, the way that, oh gosh, I segued right into it, didn't I?
You did.
But how you say things matters to the residents. Like, they don't really want to be called residents. I mean, even though we want them to be a resident, they have names. So if there's a way for you to do an insert, like a mail merge, where you're actually using their name, that's way better than doing the generic "dear residents."
Absolutely.
How do you want to be spoken to? The other thing that always comes to mind, and after sitting through thousands of presentations to me from suppliers wanting me to choose them, or reading the different notes or the different notifications that our systems would send out, whether it was for a renewal, being tardy on rent, do we sound punitive? Do we sound robotic? Or do we sound like a real person who cares? So your word choice matters. Another thing that always drove me nuts, and most of you know this, like, we don't call an apartment community a complex or a project, but we also tend to use industry lingo when we're talking to each other, like how many units are vacant, what's your turnover rate. Residents may know those words, but they don't want to hear that. That's not how they see their home. So we have to be conscientious about our word choice. And then where I was going before we switched the slide was, if you have to put up, let's say you are redoing your clubhouse, you never want just an ugly type note. You certainly don't want a handwritten note. I've always believed that any notification, any sign, you don't just tape up a piece of paper, you make it artistically and professionally soothing. You want it to look good, because that's a representation of you. So it's not only your words, it's how it looks, how it feels. So be very careful. So if you're taping things up, that's a no-no. Go rip off that tape today and go buy sleeves that you could put notifications in. It used to make me nuts when I'd see things taped to the door.
Well, back to your words matter. We couldn't agree with you more, Maria. We've done a lot of research around the sense of community and how do we enhance sense of community. And it really does come down to the frequency and the tone of our communication. And by our, I mean the management team's communication to our residents. So how frequently are we communicating with them? And what is the tone of that communication? Now, when I was first in property management and I was a young property manager, it was in the late 90s. We didn't have a lot of Grammarly's or Chat GPTs to help us with writing, and I was not the best writer. So I'm pretty sure a lot of my letters to residents came off very transactional, very stoic, and then sometimes even very bossy, almost like I was treating my residents like children. But now there are so many resources available to help us with that, to help edit our letters to be more friendly, professional, courteous, and helpful. If you haven't done one, Marie and I were talking earlier about conducting a friendliness audit. So look at all of those letters you use, those templates you have, those system notifications, and see if you can't friendly up the tone of that communication.
Think about it. If I hate being spoken to like I'm a child, and I don't like being told what to do. But if I'm invited and it's a conversation, I'm much more likely to want to acquiesce and to get on board. Your residents are the same, as are your employees, just as a side note. Carla and I were talking about Chat GPT. I was just running several things of mine through it, and I asked for it to rewrite it. So you can take a letter and put it in there and ask it to please rewrite it with a friendly tone. just to get some ideas, because it's not natural to us. We've all been using these stoic, letters, as Carla said, for years. So we've got to change that. I would act as though when you're talking to your residents, you're talking to a friend, somebody that you care about, somebody that you want to be happy.
Absolutely.
The other thing, and on here is, it is so important. This is really management 101. We were all taught this in our early years of leasing, but is to call people by their name. It's, to me, it's important. So when somebody walks in your office, you stand up, you greet them, you smile, you wave, and you call them by your name. If you're out walking the property, if you can't remember everybody's name, you're still saying, hello, how are you? I love to ask the question, how is everything in your apartment? If you're asking that, you might learn something. Is there anything we can do for you? Ask them questions that allow them to tell you what they think and what they need, and then accept that feedback. Don't put a wall up. Don't, be opposed to it. We've got to listen to it. One of the key things nowadays too, y'all know how important pets are to people. I don't know if you heard earlier when Carla first started, one of my little dogs decided to growl at the other one. They sit on my desk. Jinx is now on the floor. But if you know, and Carla, you know this about me because I used to have my dog at work. Anybody that knew my dog's name and thought about my dog, gave me a dog goodie, anything, I automatically loved them. So
You formed a
knowing,
connection.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
so dogs are a great way for you to soften up your communication if your residents have dogs. They love that. If you're not a dog person, you can at least say nice things to the dog. Oh, how is Sammy doing today? Or, does he like the dog park? You don't have to go up and, cuddle and kiss them. You just need to have.
Although that could be fun too.
I've been doing it. I immediately light up.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say use their names. I've always been that person that as soon as you give me your name, I forget it instantly, and I struggle. And it's not that I don't want to. Sometimes I'll sit there and repeat somebody's name over and over in my head, and then 2 seconds later, it's gone. I don't know what it is about that. And so I've had to learn to say, I'm so sorry. Can you please remind me of your name again? And I don't think that is I think that when you care enough to ask, that it's actually a positive. What would you say about that?
I definitely think that's a positive, because they know that you care, you're asking. I also think there's a couple tricks you can do. I'm a note taker. I wouldn't walk a property or be anywhere without my notebook. So I would jot it down, when they tell you, and just say, oh, let me make a note. My memory's terrible, but you're important to me. The other thing is use their name right away. So if Carla's introducing herself to me and she says, oh yeah, I'm Carla, I live in apartment 101, I'm going to say back, Carla, it's so great to meet you. How's everything in apartment 101? And I'll make a cute face, because that helps to reinforce the name. Now, chances are I'm going to forget by the next time I see her, but you can make notes. For me, saying it, seeing it, writing it helps me to remember. And there's certainly nothing wrong with saying, I am so sorry, but I forgot your name. Tell me again, please.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the new thing around names, and not to harp on names, but the new thing around names is making sure that we're using people's preferred name. And we're not addressing individuals with slang like, hey, lady, or, that's just not the professional aura that we want to put out there, right?
Absolutely. From that stance, if you don't know their name and you need to address them with something, you can always say Miss, Mrs., Sir, even though I don't like that, because for me, again, I start to think they think I'm old, but, don't use slang. I'm a big no slang person, keep it professional. it's important that they know you respect them. And as soon as you get too loose with your words, you can lose that level of professionalism that they expect. That goes right back to what do they think, of the value. Part of the value is that you're professional and that you treat them with respect.
Absolutely. So if we're doing everything we can to maximize value, we're increasing our sense of community by using friendly and consistent communication, we should be able to increase resident referrals, right?
You would think so. That's the goal. But you know what? If you're not talking about it to them, it's not always on the forefront of their mind. So think about it. If we're having all these conversations, but we haven't worked in, hey, what do your friends think when they come over? General question. Have you brought your friends to the pool? Do you have you met your neighbors? The types of things that are starting to instill that this is a neighborhood and that this is their community. And, isn't it great when you can surround yourself with people that you like? So some of that, and I love the keep the romance alive, some of this is part of the romance, is keeping these things that are important for them and for us, because we all want to have people that we like around us. That's pretty normal human need, but we don't always remind everyone that lives in our community of that. Why don't you like to pick your neighbors? And we know these things, but we don't think of it as part of the conversation, part of the romance.
So how do you keep the romance alive?
Well, I think it takes caring and kindness, and you have to want to do it. It's just like in a relationship. Do you have a date night? Now, date night converted into apartments, and I know that resident events weren't high on the list, and I know why they're not. I've seen many a resident event have the same 5 people that always come. I think that we're not trying to figure out what do the residents want. And remember, you've got a variety of people, so you can't be thinking that one thing is going to attract all your residents. So it's a variety of things. So
sounds like a good time for a survey.
Absolutely. I don't think I really don't think we ask our residents enough questions. And I do think that a lot of it needs to come natural just from your communication, your contact with the residents. But I think that we survey residents, but there's so many tools that you all offer, but why don't you ask them what would make them stay? What would they like? What kind of activity? What would they like to see changed? What do they think is great that you do? And see what they like.
What are your interests? What are your hobbies?
Yes.
Right. Then you can start to gather that data and create different groups so that you can engage more of your residents in your resident events. And not everyone's going to come to the same event. I may go to a gardening event, while Maria might go to a yappy hour.
Yes. And think about this. Once you start collecting the data and talking to your residents via survey, via text, and by the way, I was surprised that email is still the first communication tool, because so much of the market, and depending on your demographic, has really moved to texting. So your millennials and that era, they really are text people, text and social media. When you get to I can't remember all the populations, your baby boomers and things like that, they're still probably email or even door hangers. So you've got to communicate that way. But everybody is different. And if again, and you've got most of this data, what your age groups are, what your demographics are, how many people have pets, then you can tailor your events, your social media, everything to those different groups. So you might do, I'm seeing properties at 30 to 50% have a pet or higher. I would love to hear what satisfies knows about that. But let's pretend that you've got 30 to 50% pets. Are you doing 4 to 6 pet events a year? Probably not. But you would, and if you're doing all yappy hours, you're not going to get everybody because a lot of people work. Do you do pet walks? I would definitely have photos at Halloween and different occasions where you have one of your team members take pictures of the pets dressed in costumes.
Or better yet, find a professional photographer that wants to build up their portfolio.
Exactly.
Pet photos are so fun. Absolutely.
Exactly. I had a professional photographer do pet pictures, and her photography business is now only pets. It was a whole new start for her in California. But if you don't know what your residents want, you're not going to be able to deliver. I also think that when you're trying to create that sense of community, many properties don't think about doing a shared activity with your team and the residents. And I'm going to use pets again because it's near and dear to me. Organizing your residents to volunteer and your team members to go to a non-kill shelter, a no-kill shelter, walk the dogs, clean the pens, brush them, or do something, for recycling. There's so many things you can do together, because when your residents like your team, now again, you have to keep that level of professionalism, but doing shared events that are for the overall community helps strengthen your community.
Maria, you touched on a topic that we're starting to do a little bit of research into, which is corporate social responsibility. Does it matter to your residents? Now, I don't want to give too much away because we're still in the middle of what we call our biannual online renter study. So if you're familiar with Satisfaction apartment ratings, every 2 years we do a huge online renter study, and we're in the middle of a renter study right now, meaning we've got about 5,500 respondents who've already taken our online renter study, and we added a few questions. And one of our new questions was about, does it matter when your apartment community participates in environmental and social activities? Now, I'm not going to share the results yet, but it's some pretty interesting findings. And Maria, I think intuitively, you've already kind of touched on that. And we've had such a great conversation. I hate to stop it, but I think it's time for us to play fact or fiction. And having spoken about our online renter study, I did pull some data from our current renter study that hasn't closed yet. And some of this data may change over the next 3 weeks as we get even more respondents participating in that survey. But this is the most recent data from that survey. And I literally just pulled these numbers this morning. So we're going to play fact or fiction, and we're going to see what Maria knows about some of these topics and as it relates to those online renters. Guys, as always, I want you to play along with us. Get ready, head on over to Slido. It's a fact or fiction. I'm going to read some quick statements from that renter study, and all you need to do, Maria, you tell us too what you think. Is it fact or is it fiction? Are you ready, Maria?
I'm ready.
All right, our first question. Over 70% of renters follow an apartment community or a property management company on social media. Do you think that is fact, or do you think that is fiction?
I would love to think it's fact, but that seems surprisingly high, but ooh. I want to say fiction, but it seems like the answer is going to be fact.
No, you're right. That's fiction. That is not the case. You are absolutely right, Marie. Your intuition, as always, is right there. Actually, as of this morning, it's actually only close to about 25%. Now, guys, that number can change, so it might change as the survey closes, but as of this morning, with the 5,500 respondents we have, it's only about 25% of them that actually follow any apartment community or management company on social media. So good one. All right, let's see how our audience did. They were on the fence too. It looked like 55% of you thought that was fact. 45% of you knew it was fiction. Great job, guys. Let's go to our next question. The top reason a renter would or does use an apartment community social networking page is for news updates about the apartment community from the community staff. Is this fact or is this fiction? What do you think, Maria? Out of all the different reasons that you would want to follow, the number one reason is to get news and updates about the apartment community from the community team.
That could be fact. I'm leery. I tend to think they, yeah, I'll go with fact, even though I'm torn.
Well, you're right again. You're absolutely right again. It is fact. As of this morning, that was the number one reason. But I will say that a calendar of community events is a close runner-up. So by the time the survey ends, that might change. All right, let's see what our audience thought. 70% said fact. You guys are absolutely right. That is a fact. That is one of the top reasons, if not the top reason, residents will follow your community page. All right, next fact or fiction. Approximately 35% of apartment seekers rely on referrals from residents and coworkers as a source of information when they are searching for a new apartment. Is this fact or is this fiction? 35% of people looking for an apartment will ask a friend or family for a referral.
I think it seems high, especially when you think about our answers to how many actually translate to renters.
Well, it's a fact.
Wow.
It is fact. 35%.
We should be closing a lot more referrals.
Yep. So again, this is different. This isn't saying how many leases are you receiving from referrals. It's how many renters are asking their friends for a recommendation.
But you know what? I've always believed that when you get a referral, we should be able to close on them. I mean, because you've already got that connection. And also it's interesting that our closing rates aren't higher on this.
All right, last one. Let's see how we're going to do. Residents prefer the apartment community staff to communicate with them via a resident portal or mobile app. Fact or fiction?
Mobile app, does that include texting?
No. It would be like a push notification.
Okay, I'd say it's fiction.
And you're right. It's absolutely fiction. Residents prefer email, but I'll tell you, text notification is neck and neck. It may even be, by the time the survey's done, equal or slightly above. But as of this morning, email is still the number one preference, with text messaging coming in very closely as a number two. So just a few little fun tidbits from our new renter study that'll be out at the end of this year. I cannot wait to share all of the insights that we have for the renter study coming up. Audience, this is Maria. If you want to connect with her, scan this QR code. This will bring you to her LinkedIn page. Go ahead and follow her, connect with her. If you're having any company events or for training or speaking opportunities, she's a joy and a wealth of knowledge. Maria, thank you so much for being on our show today, on our program today.
My pleasure. I loved it. And thank you, everybody who was in attendance. And if there is anything I can do for Carla, you know, we're here for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And guys, don't forget, to go over to Facebook or Instagram and add a comment. Tell us what you learned, what you found most valuable from today's program, what your biggest takeaway was. Our education team judges all the submissions and gives out one $50 gift card to the most insightful entry. And then also don't forget, next month, we're going to have another conversation. This time it's going to be with a risk management professional, Sean Thornton. He's been in risk management for many, many, many years. And because in October, we have the Fire Awareness Week, which starts on October 8th, we're going to talk all about plan and prevent. We're going to talk about some not so fun facts about apartment fires and how you can help prevent and prepare for them. So I'm looking forward to that conversation with Sean. So as always, guys, at the end of this program, you're going to get a survey, and I value your feedback. So please consider filling that out for me so that I can continue to improve this show for you. And thank you for joining the conversation today. Again, I'm Carla Alicea, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.